everybody. Welcome back to Black Brilliance Now. I am Tate Dezay from Mr. Big Head Reads. Mr. Big Head Production and Your Life Media and Marketing is celebrating Black History Month in a unique way by highlighting Black brilliance in various forms. We are interviewing community leaders, scholars, activists, and artists in the Black community from across the country. And I am delighted to have all the way from Jackson, Mississippi, Dr. Julius Fleming Jr. He is an associate professor of English at the University of Maryland, College Park. He is recently a winner of the Hooks National Book Award from the Benjamin L. Hooks Institute for Social Change at the University of Memphis. Dr. Fleming was honored for his works and his book called Black Patience, Performance, Civil Rights, and the Unfinished Project of Emancipation. I'm super excited to welcome him into Black Brilliance Now. What's up, Dr. Fleming?
That's good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. It's such a pleasure and a delight to chat with you for a brief moment about Black History Month and about Black Brilliance. I'm just curious to know, when you hear Black Brilliance, what comes to mind for you?
If I'm being frank, it's like, oh wow, you sure you want me on a show about Black Brilliance? That was the first thought. But more seriously, when I think about Black Brilliance, I think about Black people.
Mm.
I know very few Black people that I wouldn't consider to be brilliant in some form. So to me, it just seems a natural fit, Blackness and brilliance.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of people who may not know who you are. If you can give us a brief background and tell us a little bit about how you arrived to where you are now.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, more than anything, I'm a bona fide country boy. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. As you said, I spent 22 years in Mississippi. I went to school there. I went to undergrad there. I attended Tougaloo College, which is a historically Black college. And after graduating from Tougaloo, I did grad school in Philly at UPenn, and then I started the job at the University of Maryland, College Park.
Wow, so you're just gonna skim through all of the things in between.
Oh
You
no, so
have,
we can get into some things. Let me know.
yeah, no, you accelerated really fast, but I appreciate you talking about your humble beginnings, being a country boy from Mississippi. You have released so many publications and have really landed your mark in the academy. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about what kind of helped you formulate your writings and your position as a Black academic, especially in a such a white centered space, right? So I'm just curious to know what pushed you to become who you are today in your writings.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it wasn't always easy. That is centering myself and kind of identifying with who I am and the culture that I grew up in, and actually privileging that and seeing the value in it. There was a moment when I left Mississippi, for example, when I went to Philadelphia for grad school. I
Mm.
was the only Black man in my graduate cohort, and I was also one of the few Southern people in the circles that I was running in. So there were moments where I would kind of, to be frank, be ashamed of my Black Southernness, and I would try and hide it, downplay it. There was a moment, however, in going back to Mississippi and reconnecting with the South, I realized there's so much value here, and that actually opened up a space for me to critically appreciate where I come from in my writing, in my thinking, in my teaching.
Absolutely. And over time, I'm curious to know if your definition of success, right, has changed or has it evolved, and what motivates you to continue in your work. So, many folks I'm from Texas, so not too far from where you're from in Mississippi, and oftentimes just graduating high school, going to college is just the marker of success, right? And for me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Like I got out of my neighborhood, I got out and was able to get some level of exposure and things of that nature. But as we begin to grow and evolve, I'm curious to know, what does success look like for you?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I come from a family that is not pretentious at all, a working class Black family. And I remember growing up and my grandparents would say something like, "Oh, you don't have to go to college. That would be great. But even if you don't go to college and you become a janitor, our desire is for you is that you be the best janitor that you can be, that you
Mm.
not stop at the entry level position, that you go on to be supervisor, maybe even start your own cleaning company." So I was raised in a family that was always ambitious and they encouraged ambition without attaching to these kind of social hierarchies that
Mm.
require college education. So I was always committed to success. I think the older, as I get older, um, the more I accomplished, the more I just have desired. So I actually started
Mhm.
out my career in global wealth management, doing an internship for Morgan Stanley. I remember leaving to Mississippi. I got to New York, and they picked me up in this fancy Escalade, and I had a private driver with a sign with my name on it. And at one point, I'm like, okay, that's success, right? But I was miserable in the job, and so I realized
Mhm.
that I had to readjust and revise what I consider success.
Absolutely. And now you being a tenured professor at a Research One institution that is pretty elite, right, in the East Coast and throughout this country, I'm sure you face various challenges in your field, being a black man. But not only that, but writing about what you're writing about, right? You are talking about race, identity, power. You're looking at this through what I would say an unconventional way of looking at it through theatrical performance and these things that you are able to really kind of frame in a way that other academics aren't doing. So I'm curious to know with your tenured process and being black and being a man in this space, how has that been and have you faced any challenges?
Oh, it's been hard.
Oh yeah, I was.
It's been hard. It's like I have my water here. Think I feel like I need the bourbon. Um, but it's so going back to grad school, I was the only black person in my cohort, PhD cohort of 16 people. And a part of the challenge was not only doing the work. I thought that I could do the work right. I had been trained at a historically black college that was about hard work, but some of the cultural struggles. For example, when we would have events, people would be eating and ordering falafel and couscous, and I was coming from a Southern culture where those things just weren't popular menu items. So being acculturated to that, also people saying things like, "Oh, do you wear shoes in Mississippi?" or "It must be so hard coming from Mississippi," or "You have such a thick accent," and these are people from Boston who are saying "Pak the ka." And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, there's nothing especially sexy about Pak the ka over "Hey y'all," but it's the struggle to push back against that kind of stuff without coming across as some of the stereotypes that people are thirsty to kind of map onto black men. And those struggles haven't gone away. When I started at the University of Maryland, College Park, there was a department of about 70 tenure track faculty members. I was the only black male faculty when I got hired.
Out
This
of
was
how many?
70, and
Wow,
this was
7-0.
7-0, and this was 2014. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So you pretty much kind of paved the way for many others to come behind you in terms of being in the arts and humanities college, and then also just being able to be up for tenured. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I appreciate saying that. In my mind, I don't see it as kind of this grand thing of paving the way, but I'll tell you what's important to me. I talked to some friends about it, and there were friends who said, "Tate, oh, well, Julius, you should just sit back and enjoy being the only one. There can be benefits to being the only one
Wow. Yeah.
care of." And ethically, I can't move like that because if people have moved like that in my life, I wouldn't be here right now. And so a part of my entire goal, once I get in tenure, to get more black people in the department, to get more black students in the department, to get more black students in PhD programs, to get more black grad students into jobs, and that's been as important for me as my scholarship.
Absolutely. Access is key, right? And sometimes someone has to go through the door to hold it open for the ones behind us, right? And so I'm curious also to know if there has been a moment in your life where you thought about maybe some challenges that you overcame in Mississippi. It was like, this has prepared me for this moment. So I know that you spent some time at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville and after your graduate work. So I'm curious to know, like, with your upbringings and some experience you might have had in Mississippi or even elsewhere, have you had a moment where it's like, this is what has prepared me for this?
Yeah, I owe so much to Mississippi.
Mm,
Mississippi is the nation's scapegoat. We like
mm,
to say that those people down there are this way. They're the poorest state, the least educated state, the most racist state. But a part of what so I was never called the N word in Mississippi. I was called the N word for the first time in Silver Spring, Maryland, in 2016. Um, at a downtown, very nice grocery store.
Mm,
So, part of what I've come to realize is that in Mississippi, people are just overt and blatant about certain kind of social and racial structures and configurations. Segregation is very real. You experience it at a material level every day. Whereas when I got to Philadelphia and then subsequently to DC, those same dynamics were there, but people just didn't want to name it.
mm,
Desire to think that, these things weren't true. And so when I was in Charlottesville, I was there during those racist riots, when I was on that campus when they stormed the campus, and the reaction was like, "Oh my god, how could this happen here?"
mm,
The university was founded by a founding father who owned slaves, and who wrote things like "Black people's griefs are transient," and
mm,
black men don't really love their women, right? They're too, in other words, sexualized, have a deep sense of love. So a part of what Mississippi taught me is that what is really scapegoated, as a deep South problem, it's a national problem. So I
mm.
don't have the shock, I don't have the surprise. Mississippi equipped me for how to navigate it and to deal with it.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I can only imagine what it was like to be on that campus during that time. And being a Southerner myself, I too relate to some of the new experiences that you have when you move to the East Coast. I moved to New York, and that was the first time I ever heard the N word used with a hard ER
Oh, yeah, there's
towards
a
me.
difference. That's
Right? I grew up in Waco, and I'm like, yo, I've never heard that's never happened to me until I got to New York, of all places, right? So it's interesting and unique how that happens. I'm also I'm wondering for you and your inspirations and writings and even also in the way that you teach. Are there like specific individuals or even movements that you can speak to in Black history that has inspired your work?
Yeah, so I'm not, one to latch on to one movement or one program or one person or one political program. I think I'm just in awe of Black people across history, right? From the unnamed slave who had the audacity to jump overboard the ship because they couldn't live a life of slavery, to the civil rights activists, right, who staged the civil rights movement. And it's not just Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, but my partner is from the Mississippi Delta, and so sometimes when I'm visiting my family and love there, and we're driving down Highway 49, and I'm looking at these back roads, and I know that these unnamed people were driving miles to go to these civil rights meetings
Mm,
without light, right? With the Ku Klux Klan looming, just the sheer boldness and audacity that it took, even if their names are lost to history, those things inspire me. And so while I might
mm.
not be out attending a civil rights meeting or marching in the same way, I do ask myself, how can I take inspiration to effect some kind of change in the way that they do?
Absolutely. And well, I will definitely say that you are doing it, especially in your recent book, Black Patience. I would love for you to just talk a little bit about that book and the inspiration around that and the premise of it, especially for those who are non-academics, right? Because I've read some of your stuff and I had to reread some things. I'm like, what? Wait, what? I'm like, so if you could speak to our viewers and those who may not know your works really, if you could speak to Black patience and what that means for you.
Yeah, yeah. Before I go into that, Tate, I actually just want to say thank you for this platform. It
Mhm.
reminds me of being in a black barbershop growing up. And you say, you had to reread some things in the book. It's like I had to write that book in that way because I still carry the weight of my blackness. I have to demonstrate to the field that I can talk the talk and walk the walk, right? In order to get tenure. So I'm actually grateful for a platform like this where we can have those barbershop kind of conversations. And the book is called Black Patience. And part of what I was interested in, I was studying the civil rights movement, and Black people were constantly saying, "We want our freedom now. We will not wait for our freedom." And as I started to do research for the book, I realized that at every point in this nation, at every point in the new world, actually more broadly, Black people have been told to wait. They've been told to be patient. They've been told that there's a horizon of freedom just around the corner. And the reality is that that horizon never comes
Mm,
that is lasting, right? So we get emancipation, but right after emancipation, we get lynching, we get sharecropping, we get convict leasing, right? Or we get our first black president, and then we know everything else that happened after that as a
right.
punishment. So a part of what the book is doing is showing how these black people have one recognized the violence of black patients, the violence of black people being forced away, but also how they protested it to say we want our freedom now.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's the reason why we were saying Black Brilliance now, right? Like this is the moment, right? And we are seizing it and really understanding that our lives are on the line. We can't afford to wait, right? We can't afford to show up to school late or show up to class late or show up to work late, right? We have to be 10 steps ahead. We have to, think of futuristically about generations behind us that are coming behind us. And so I appreciate that so much, this sense of urgency that you talked about. I'm wondering though, and maybe this is the pessimist inside of me, but I'm wondering for you, like what sustains you when you feel like, and if these feelings ever come up, that wow, will we ever reach it, right? So how do you center optimism and and experience joy while also acknowledging the state that we're in as a community?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a struggle, Tate. There are days when I'm more pessimistic than I am optimistic because that's the thing when you study this stuff for centuries, you understand repetitions. You understand cycles that even though things look different structurally, they're very similar. So it is easy to be pessimistic, but I think a part of my optimism, frankly, comes from looking at my own family's story, looking at so many other stories like those where there's not some kind of leap to a total freedom within U.S. democracy, but there have been these strides made. There have been moments of progress that at a kind of actual level, I can say today is better than yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I have access to this institutional space. That's not to say that it solves all problems, right? That is a difference that gives me some sense of optimism to keep moving and to keep fighting.
Absolutely. Keep moving and keep fighting, right? Keep your hand on the plow is what my grandma used to say.
I we
One of the main things that we used to say in grad school, it was very few of us who were, of melanated backgrounds, but we would say, stay the course.
stay
We'll
the
be
course.
just walking past each other in the hallway and just say, stay the course. And so I appreciate you sharing that. One last question, because I could talk to you all day, but I'm want you to really kind of dig deep into thinking about what your legacy is, and what is something that you want to leave for future generations to know that this was Dr. Julius Fleming Jr.'s touch. Like this is something that you want folks to know that this was you.
Well, I mean, brilliance and legacy. You're using all these words that I don't think I'm worthy of using. So appreciate the gassing before Monday. But I think maybe two things. I love joy. I
Mhm.
love Black joy, and despite the successes, all the successes, those things are great. The book, the graduate education, those things. At the end of the day, for me, they're important because they bring me joy, but they also help me to pay my bills.
Mm.
And so this is what I want people to remember. When I leave that work, I leave that work. And I plug into another source that is about my joy that has nothing to do with my job.
Yes,
I think keeping those things disaggregated, right, and remembering when I go into that classroom, that it is an art of love, but it's also a way to pay my bills.
that's
It
right.
helps sustain me. The other thing I think, in terms of my own legacy, is that I know as much as I write against Black patients, I practice patience as a strategy, and I also practice quietness.
Mm.
There are moments where I have to be loud. There are moments where I have to be impatient. There are moments where I have to sit back and to
Mhm.
and to survey the landscape and to figure out how I'm gonna stage the next attack to help my people to move a little
Absolutely.
bit further, and I'll leave you with this from my grandmother. She used to always say, um, "If you're gonna flip the world on a baby, don't let them know until they're flipping." And I keep that at my core.
Wow, words to live by. And I love that notion of quietness. Sometimes when we think about quietness, we just think about, oh, the absence of noise, being in a state of absence of noise, but really truly like being still, right? And being with your thoughts and being with your spirit, right, is so important because there's so much going around. Social media, things are happening on television and in our communities and our families, and it's like, to sustain and to remain present, you really need to be still in most moments. And so, Thank you for that. That's such a reminder for me, because I'm trying to figure out how to get joy outside of my work. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
the struggle.
it's hard. It is hard. And so, but I appreciate you and I appreciate this time. I know that it's not even just the tipping point of your career and where you're going. You're just really getting started. So I'm really excited to see where your Black brilliance is going to take us as a community. And thank you for all of the young brothers and the young sisters that you are inspiring every day in your pulpit, which is in the classroom. And so I appreciate that so much. And so how can folks stay in contact with you? Are there ways that they can connect with you as well for more information about things that's coming down your pipeline?
Yeah, so I'll give that. First, I want to say thank you to you for this, but also for the work that you're doing at the University of Maryland, and also creating these community conversations for our people. Those are important. I'm on social media ish. If you look up Julius Fleming Jr., you can find me generally on most of the major social media platforms.
Awesome. All right. And they can purchase Black Patience, Performance, Civil Rights, and the Unfinished Project of Emancipation anywhere you can buy a book.
For
I'm
sure.
assuming. Okay. We want to make sure y'all get that. Black History Month. Thank you again, Dr. Fleming. And thank you all for tuning in to Black Brilliance Now. Until next time, be safe.